Hello and welcome back to another video tutorial here at Geekatplay Studios. My name's Gary Miller. The other day I was sitting around and I was playing around in Photoshop and I thought I would create an iPod. And so as a reference I went to Apple's site and downloaded a picture of their iPod Classic, which is what I've got displayed in front of me. Now the one on the right is the one from Apple's site that they probably created in Photoshop or had someone create in Photoshop, and the one on the left is the one I created in Photoshop, and I think I like mine a little bit better. Well, I may do a tutorial on creating one in Photoshop, but today I want to create an iPod Classic anyway, of one here in Hexagon. I also did one on the Nano in Photoshop, but I'm not going to do the Nano. Everything that we do creating the iPod Classic, we would also be able to do for the Nano. So here is the one that I've created here in Hexagon, and it's got the little orange area here for your lock button. It's got the headphone jack, and the only thing it doesn't have are the little arrows for the buttons, and I'm going to do that in Photoshop once we're finished with the modeling of it. And this is the project that we're going to set out to create today. So I'm going to, well, I'll just hide it. First thing I would encourage you to do is to go to apple.com, check out their iPods, click on iPod Classic, look through the gallery, and download this, or just copy and paste it onto your desktop. Download this picture here because we're going to need two of these images. One, we're going to need the front image here, and we're going to need this image here showing the side profile. So let's begin. Now, if you've seen some of my other tutorials, all I did is take that image and paste it or display it on my back reference grid. So to begin with, I'm going to come up here, create a cube, and I'm going to put the cube so that it goes into my reference grid here, because now I can determine its width pretty easily. And I could come to a front view and do the same thing, but this is just another way. Okay, well, it's obviously wide enough. Let's move it around, and let's check on its height. I'll just move that down to the bottom, select the top, move that up. There we go. Now it's perfect height. Now let's work on the width. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it and then do the width, and then I'll end up rotating it back. The reason being is that way I can keep my axes, modeling axes, the way I prefer them. Okay, I'll just move this up to the front there, select the back, and then just adjust its depth. I guess the whole thing could be made a little bit wider. Okay, I'd say that's pretty good. Now I'm just going to rotate it back, move it over here. Okay, it's in perfect position. What I'm going to do is move it over. I don't need to have worry about my profile reference image right now. I'm just going to work on this. So I'm going to grab these four corners here using my Edge Select tool. And I'm going to add a chamfer to them. I'm going to zoom in. Actually, you know what? I'm going to abort that. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come over here to a front view. I'm going to move this in front of my object here. Let me zoom in. select the, oops, let me go back to a perspective. Okay, let me move this in front of my object. And let me check it here in front view. Okay, now I'm going to go to perspective. This is kind of weird the way Hexagon does this, but I have no other choice. Select these corners here. Come on. There we are. Got my 4 corners. Now I'm going to change to front view. By unfortunately changing to front view, I lose the selection of those corners. So I'm just going to hit Control Z, and now it comes back to them. Now I'm just going to adjust the radius so that it matches the radius of my reference image here. That looks good. Maybe 6 points for the range. And I think this could come down just a bit. Okay, let's come back to perspective. Now what we need to do is I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. I'm going to move it over here into my side view. And I'm going to select that edge. I'm going to loop it. Now I'm going to add a chamfer to the back of it. And I'll keep it at 6. And I'd say that's pretty good. Validate that. Now I will spin this back around. Now what I want to do, and this is just my own preference, but follow with me and you'll see why. I'm going to select that back edge. I'm going to hold down Shift. Wait a minute, hold on. Let me check, make sure I didn't add too many and that we get some overlapping here. No, okay. I was looking at this thinking maybe I set too high of a number in the range on the chamfer tool, and when I had this zoomed out, it looked like it may have gotten tweaked there, but it didn't. Okay, so I'm going to select this back face here. I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm just going to hit the plus key on my numeric keyboard, and I'm just going to expand that selection up just like that, so that that back radius edge is selected. And I'm going to come over here, Vertex Modeling, and I'm going to extract it. The reason being is, at least on on my iPod Classic, mine is stainless steel in the back, and I think that looks pretty nice. So by creating 2 separate objects here, it will allow us to easily apply a separate material to this when we bring it into Hexagon view. But what I want to do is I want to make it just a little bit larger than the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to Properties. I'm going to click on the Keep Ratio. Now whatever numeric value I change in here, that ratio will be applied to all the other axes. In other words, if I change the X size by whatever amount, that same ratio will also be reflected in the Y and the Z. So I want just a very little bit, so I'm going to start with 25, and that might not be enough. Let's go 30, and I want to definitely look around, pivot it around so I can see. Let's try 35. Okay, that's just, look at it, it's just a very little bit, and that's what I want. So I'm going to hide the front, click on Close All, re-enable the front of it again, Click off. Okay, now we can see that edge a little bit better, and that will allow us to apply a different texture to it because it's a separate piece. So let's come over here. It's time to start creating some materials. New. I guess I should select this first. New. I'm going to call this back. And I'll just create a slightly different version of slightly darker gray. And let's see what that looks like. Click off of it. Yeah, there we go. And for the front, I'm going to create new. I'm going to call this white, because the butt and the round toggle dial button will also share this color. So I'm going to make it real bright. I'm going to change the specular color pretty bright, and I'm going to crank up the what setting is it? The spread. Okay, let's click off, see what we have accomplished so far. That's looking pretty good, and I may ultimately, I think I'll do that now, I may want to dial down the brightness of this because it will be a little bit too much, I think. Okay. All right, what I want to do now is select this front edge, loop it, and I want to zoom in close here because I want to add just a slight chamfer to that edge, just a very slight one. Because even though it is almost a straight edge, when we bring it into view and go to render it, you know, there's nothing that screams 3D more than sharp 90-degree corners, and it just looks so much more machined if you have just a very slight little radius. It doesn't have to be much, but just something to knock off that sharp corner. And I may even want to go a little bit more than what I just did, so I'm going to undo that. And zoom in here again. I'll add a little bit more. Let's click off of that. There we are. That just that nice little softness adds a greater amount of detail and I think realism to it, especially when we bring it in and go to render it. But the back piece, I'm going to leave that sharp, a sharp edge, because it will distinguish the top from the back a little bit better with interplay of light. So I'm going to save my progress so far. We're done with the back, so I might as well go ahead and lock that. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to create the window, the little LED display. So come back over here, grab another cube. I'm just going to lay it on the front of this. Actually, you know what? I don't even need to lay it on the front of it. I'm going to make it to the correct size in the same fashion that we did creating the body of the iPod. So making sure that it is cutting into my 3D, my background reference image. I'm just going to size it, and there we are. Now I'll bring this down to the bottom of my image, select the top, bring it up, and that looks good. I will grab these edges here and give a radius or a chamfer to them, trying to duplicate or match the reference image. So let me add chamfer, Let's say that looks good. I'm going to add 4 should be sufficient. Okay, now what I'll do is now I will lay it onto my iPod. Validate that. And now I'll just bring it up and into place. Let's see, that looks good. Okay, I'm going to select the back edge like that and bring it up because we're going to use a Boolean operation here, and we're going to cut it into the front body of our iPod. Just needs to be thin like a little credit card. Okay, I'm going to select the back edge. I'm going to loop that. And I'm going to add a bevel or a chamfer to that as well. About like, come on down. No, it stopped. About like that. I guess I want to have this space here wide with no bevel on it. I want the bevel to be down in there. Half the object to be beveled. Okay, let's now zoom in, but try not to do it too much. I'm just going to seat it in there. I guess like that. And with that selected, I'm going to hit Boolean operation, click on my iPod, and it cuts it in there nicely. And it adds that roundness to the back of it also. So let's look and see what we've got so far. I like that. I'm going to save it. Now I'm going to select that. I'm going to select this face here. Now, this is why I'm selecting the face. You can see with the shading that we've got a harsh line all the way across here. So some of the points have gotten moved around and they're not all the same. And that's why it's creating that shading. And so to solve that problem easily, I'm going to select it and I'm going to delete that face. I'm going to zoom in close in here, and I want to select this bottom edge here inside this cutout area, and I'm going to loop that, make sure it selected everything, and I'm going to come up here to lines and extract. Now just to make sure, I'm going to press close curve to make sure it closed it off and that there are no gaps in it. I'm going to come over here to Surface Modeling, Coon Surface. I'm going to apply a flat edge to that. Now if we click off of it now and re-enable our iPod, notice you don't have that shading that went diagonally across the surface of the object there. So that's why I did that. Now I'll just weld them together, and we've taken care of that problem. I believe I see some right here, depending upon how we pivot this. And we may need to clean that up as well. But that's it for this part of this tutorial. We will cover the rest of it and creating some texture maps in Photoshop that will allow us to project onto our model the word menu and these little icons here. So that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching here at Geekatplay Studios. My name's Gary Miller. Have a good day.